The war that shattered heaven had ended, but victory did not bring peace. The Titans had fallen, their thrones broken, their banners cast into the abyss. The young Olympians ruled the skies, and the world bent beneath their new order. Yet beneath the soil, beneath the roots of mountains and the silence of the deep earth, something older still breathed. The past had not forgiven, it had only retreated. Before we get started, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and smash that like button, and subscribing is the easiest way to make sure we keep exploring together. It keeps these stories coming. While you settle in, drop a quick note. Where are you watching from, and what's the clock saying over there? Now sit back, relax, and let's ease into this journey together. The Titanomachy had crowned Zeus king of the heavens, but triumph left scars across the cosmos. Lightning had burned the sky, seas had risen in fury, mountains had cracked like clay. The Titans, once rulers of the world, now lay bound in the shadows below, their voices muffled beneath stone and iron. The new gods called it justice, the old powers called it theft. Among those who could not accept this new world was Gaia, the ancient mother of Earth itself. She had birthed the Titans, she had raised them into dominion, and now she felt their chains like thorns driven into her own flesh. Every tremor in the ground echoed their defeat. Every Olympian decree sounded to her like a wound reopening. Her grief hardened into anger, not a brief spark, but a slow, grinding pressure, like stone crushing stone. The Olympians believed the age of rebellion had ended. Gaia believed the war had only changed shape. From the depths of her ancient power, Gaia searched for something the new gods could not easily break. She would not raise another army of Titans, bound by pride and history. She would create a force born of fury itself, a being that carried storm, flame, and darkness in its bones. To do so, she turned to the deepest abyss, to the unseen void where creation twisted into nightmare. There, in the shadowed reaches of the world, Gaia joined with the ancient power of the pit, and from that union a presence began to form, not born in light, not shaped in balance, but forged from rage, from pressure, from the raw chaos that existed before the gods carved order into the sky. Long before he emerged, the world sensed him. Rivers changed their course without reason. Forests fell silent as if holding their breath. Stars dimmed behind drifting clouds. Even the winds seemed unsure which way to blow. The birth of this being was not a moment. It was a growing disturbance, a ripple spreading through the fabric of creation. Animals fled their nests. The seas churned though no storm touched them. Fire leapt higher in sacred temples. Oracles spoke in broken phrases, their visions filled with wings, coils, and endless flame. The world itself seemed to recoil, as though it recognized a shape it had once known before the rise of the gods. Then the earth opened. From the split ground rose a form that dwarfed mountains. His body stretched beyond the horizon, a towering mass of power that defied proportion. From his shoulders sprang vast wings that churned the air into storms. His limbs were coiled with strength enough to shatter cliffs, and from his waist downward writhed serpents, countless and restless, their scales glinting like wet stone beneath lightning. His eyes burned with a cold fire, not the warmth of hearth or sun, but the glow of something older, something that had watched worlds form and fall. Each breath he released rolled across the land as hot wind. Each step trembled through valleys and shook the roots of mountains. This was no creature shaped for rule or harmony. He was not meant to govern. He was meant to test, to challenge, to break. The name given him would echo through ages. Typhon, the storm given flesh, the final child of the wounded earth. When Typhon stretched his wings for the first time, the sky itself recoiled. Clouds scattered as if fleeing. Lightning flickered without command.
The heavens, once firmly held by Zeus, suddenly felt uncertain, as though a rival hand had brushed against their edges. Across the divine realm, the Olympians felt the shift instantly. Banquets stilled, music faded, even laughter died mid-breath. They had faced titans, giants, and rebellions before, but this felt different. This presence carried no banner, no army, no negotiation. It was singular, relentless, and vast. On the heights of Mount Olympus, the gods gathered in uneasy silence. Some stared toward the horizon, where storm clouds piled like mountains. Others listened for signs in the wind, hoping the disturbance would fade as so many threats had before. But deep down, each of them knew this was not another passing challenge. This was something born to confront them. Even in the depths of Tartarus, the imprisoned Titans stirred, sensing the force that now walked the world. Their chains rattled as if answering a distant call. For the first time since their fall, hope flickered in their eyes. Not hope for freedom, hope for vengeance. Above, Zeus himself felt the tremor in the sky. He had overthrown his father. He had crushed the old order. He had believed the cosmos finally bent to his will. Yet as he gazed toward the storm-dark horizon, he sensed something he had not felt since the earliest days of war: uncertainty. Typhon did not march with an army. He did not announce his purpose. He simply moved, and wherever his shadow fell, the world reacted. Storms gathered without command. Fire cracked through dry hills. Winds bent trees like grass. Nature itself seemed torn between resisting him and obeying him. He was not merely a monster. He was a question posed to the rule of the gods. Had the Olympians truly secured the world, or had they only awakened the last challenge waiting beneath it? And so, as the newborn storm spread his wings and the heavens watched in uneasy silence, the age of divine certainty began to fracture. The Titan War had ended, but a deeper test had just begun, because the earth had given birth to its final weapon, and the sky would soon have to answer it.
The first step of Typhon did not simply strike the ground, it rewrote it. Valleys shuddered as though the bones of the world had shifted. Hills sank where they stood. Rivers jolted from their beds and ran crooked, unsure of their own direction. This was not the movement of a creature crossing land. It was the land realizing something greater now walked upon it. With each stride, storms formed without warning. Clouds thickened into black towers. Lightning split the sky in jagged silence before the thunder even arrived. Winds roared through forests and snapped ancient trees as if they were reeds. The world felt less like a home and more like a drum struck by a relentless hand. Mortals sensed it first in the small ways. Birds vanished from the morning sky. Fishermen found the sea refusing their nets. Farmers watched their fields tremble as if something stirred beneath the soil. Then came the nights when the horizon glowed faintly red, and the air carried a dry heat no season had promised. Fear spread faster than sound. Villages emptied as people fled toward mountains, believing height might shield them. Others crowded temples, whispering prayers not for victory, but for survival. Fires burned constantly in sacred spaces, offerings piled high in the hope that some god still listened. Nature itself unraveled under the strain. Wolves howled at noon. Springs turned murky without cause. In places, the ground split open just enough to release a breath of steam before sealing again, like the earth exhaling in dread. It was as though the world remembered an older order, one where gods did not yet control the sky, and it braced for its return. On the heights of Mount Olympus, the Olympians gathered. Their halls still gleamed, their thrones still stood, but the confidence that once filled those chambers had thinned. The storm rising on the horizon was not one Zeus had summoned, nor one any of them could disperse with a gesture.
They spoke in low voices, each god measuring the threat through their own domain. Poseidon felt the seas responding without his command. Demeter sensed the soil recoiling from unseen pressure. Apollo read omens in the light itself and found no comforting pattern. The certainty that defined their rule faltered under a single question. What force could ignore them all at once? At the center of the hall stood Zeus, silent longer than the others expected. He had faced titans, giants, and rebellions. He had forged order from chaos with thunder in his hand. Yet, as he listened to the storm outside, he understood this was not merely another uprising. This was something born outside the system he ruled, something that did not recognize his authority. The council debated swiftly, voices rising like the winds below. Some urged immediate action, to strike before the creature drew closer. Others warned that rushing against an unknown power could shatter their advantage. A few suggested retreat, to gather strength and study the threat. The word itself felt heavy in their mouths. Retreat. It had not been spoken on Olympus since the Titan War. At last, they chose a middle path, a test, a measure of the enemy's strength. A small force of gods descended from Olympus, radiant and certain that divinity alone would scatter any creature of earth. They crossed the cloud line in a blaze of light, their forms cutting through cloud banks like stars falling toward the world. They found Typhon standing amid shattered hills, the ground around him blackened by heat and pressure. Even at rest, he seemed in motion, wings flexing against the wind, coils shifting like a nest of restless storms. When he turned his gaze toward the descending gods, the air thickened as though the sky itself hesitated. The first strike came swift and brilliant. Divine power flashed across the plain in a burst meant to end the threat before it began. For a heartbeat, the light swallowed Typhon's form entirely. Then the light broke. He stepped forward through it, unharmed, the glow sliding from his scales like rain from stone. The force that should have shattered mountains barely slowed him. With a single motion of his wings, he sent a torrent of wind back toward the gods, scattering their formation and hurling them across the sky. They regrouped, stunned, and struck again with greater fury. Thunder answered, fire answered. Even the sea surged at their command, waves climbing inland to crash toward the monster. Typhon roared, not in anger, but in response, as if the challenge itself awakened him. Heat rolled outward in a blast that turned the waves to steam before they reached him. The returning shockwave hurled the gods backward, forcing them into retreat. For the first time since their rise, Olympians withdrew from a battle unfinished. News of the failed confrontation reached Olympus before the winds carrying it had settled. The gods who returned bore no visible wounds, yet their expressions spoke clearly. This was not an enemy that could be dismissed. This was a force that resisted divine will itself. Outside the palace, the sky darkened further as Typhon resumed his march. Each step carried him closer to the mountain that symbolized the gods' dominion. Thunderheads now gathered permanently above the horizon, their edges flickering with restless lightning. The distance between storm and summit shrank with every passing hour. Within Olympus, even the marble floors seemed to tremble faintly, as if the mountain sensed the approach before the gods admitted it. Servants moved quietly. Music ceased. No feast was prepared that day. The realm of immortals, once a place of effortless confidence, now felt like a fortress waiting for a siege. Zeus stood at the balcony overlooking the clouds, his gaze fixed on the darkening line where sky met earth. He understood what the others were only beginning to grasp. This would not be a skirmish or a passing disturbance. This would be the defining test of his reign. Below, Typhon advanced without pause, each step announcing that the old world had not vanished, it had returned in a single, unstoppable form. The storm climbed the slopes of the world, and Olympus waited above it. The gods had claimed victory over chaos once before. Now chaos was coming to their door, not as an army, but as a singular force that demanded an answer. And as the thunder closed in and the mountain itself seemed to hold its breath, the stage for the greatest clash of the gods was finally set.
There are moments in myth when the sky itself seems to pause, as if waiting to see who will claim it. This was one of those moments. The storm had reached the foot of Olympus, and for the first time since the Titan War, the throne of heaven stood openly challenged. High above the clouds, Zeus rose from his throne and stepped into the open air. Lightning gathered around him without being summoned, drawn by instinct to the one who ruled it. The winds circled his form, bending into a crown of storm. The sky was his domain, and he intended to remind the world of that truth. Below, the clouds twisted apart as Typhon climbed the final slopes. His wings churned the heavens into chaos. His coils crushed stone ridges that had stood since the world's first dawn. With each step, heat rolled upward in waves that warped the air and turned drifting mist into steam. Zeus raised his hand, and the storm obeyed. Lightning split outward in branching spears that lit the entire sky white. Thunder followed instantly, a sound so vast it seemed to shake time itself. The king of the gods hurled the first bolt, not in warning, but in command, a declaration that Olympus still ruled the heavens. The strike hit Typhon squarely, exploding against his form in a cascade of blinding fire. For a heartbeat, the monster vanished within the brilliance. The sky roared with the impact, and the clouds recoiled as if expecting the threat to vanish. Typhon stepped forward through the fading light. Smoke coiled from his scales, but his stride never faltered. He lifted his head, and from his jaws poured a torrent of searing breath that climbed toward the heavens like a living storm. The blast met Zeus's next bolt mid-air, and the collision shattered the clouds in every direction. The sky erupted into chaos. Lightning rained in volleys, fire spiraled upward in response, winds screamed as if trapped between two masters. The air itself trembled under the clash, unable to decide whether it belonged to the sky or the storm rising from the earth. Zeus struck again and again, each bolt thrown with the precision that had toppled titans. Mountains below split under stray blasts, seas surged in distant echoes. The world felt the battle even where it could not see it. Typhon answered with relentless force. His wings drove cyclones that swallowed thunder. His coils lashed upward, tearing through cloud banks and forcing Zeus to shift constantly, never able to hold the same position for long. The monster did not fight with strategy or formation. He fought with sheer presence, overwhelming the sky by simply filling it. For the first time in his reign, Zeus found himself driven back. He rose higher, gathering the full weight of the heavens. The clouds condensed into a massive spiral around him, and the air grew so charged that light flickered without sound. This was the power that had ended the Titan War. This was the storm that had crowned him king. With a roar that shook the firmament, Zeus hurled a bolt brighter than any before, a streak of pure sky fire that tore through the darkness towards Typhon's chest. The impact split the horizon. For a moment, the monster staggered, the force driving him back a single step. The mountain beneath him cracked, fragments tumbling into the valleys below. The gods watching from Olympus leaned forward, hope igniting like a spark. Then Typhon straightened. With a surge of motion faster than the storm itself, he lashed upward. One massive coil struck Zeus from below, the force ripping through the cloud bank and scattering the gathered lightning. The king of the gods was hurled from the sky, his storm unraveling around him in a burst of fading brilliance. The heavens fell silent. Zeus caught himself before striking the mountain, but the blow had broken his momentum. The storm no longer crowned him. The air no longer bent instantly to his will. For the first time, the sky felt contested. Typhon advanced without hesitation. His wings filled the space where Zeus's thunder had ruled. Another blast of scorching wind tore through the clouds, forcing the god backward again. Zeus raised his arm to summon lightning, but the response came slower now, the storm resisting rather than leaping to his call. The monster struck again. The clash that followed sent shockwaves across Olympus itself. Columns trembled, golden banners snapped in wild winds. Even the immortal halls seemed uncertain of their footing as the king sky faltered under the relentless assault. When Zeus fell the second time, the heavens dimmed. He did not fall to the ground, but the storm around him shattered into fragments, lightning scattering into stray flashes instead of gathering into weapons. The force that once crowned him now flickered like a dying fire. Typhon loomed above him, not triumphant, but inevitable. Across Olympus, panic spread in ripples. The gods had never seen their king driven back so completely. One by one, they understood what this meant. If Zeus fell, Olympus fell with him. And if Olympus fell, the order of the world would fracture beyond repair. Fear moved faster than commands. Some gods fled the halls entirely, racing toward distant lands. Others cloaked themselves in mortal shapes, hoping to vanish from the monster's sight. The palace that once rang with certainty emptied into silence as immortals scattered across the world they had ruled. Below, the storm spread outward from Typhon like a living tide. Winds turned wild across continents. The seas lost their rhythm. The sky no longer carried the steady hand that had shaped it since the Titan War. For the first time in ages, the cosmos felt unanchored. Zeus, battered but unbroken, struggled to rise amid the collapsing storm. The sky still answered him faintly, but its voice had weakened. He understood now what this battle truly was. Not merely a fight for Olympus, but a contest for who commanded the forces that held the world together. Above him, Typhon's wings spread wide, casting a shadow vast enough to swallow the fractured clouds. And as that shadow stretched across the heavens, it seemed for a moment that the age of the Olympians had reached its breaking point, and that the storm born of the earth now held the sky itself in its grasp.
When a storm loses its master, the silence that follows can feel heavier than thunder. After the fall of Zeus, the heavens did not erupt, they faltered. Lightning flickered without aim, clouds drifted like broken banners. The sky no longer carried command, it carried uncertainty. Across the world, the absence of Zeus's strength spread like a shadow. Storms rose without rhythm, then died without rain. The winds forgot their paths. Even the sun seemed dimmer, as if unsure whether the order of the cosmos still held. Hidden far from Olympus, the surviving gods gathered in scattered refuges. They had fled not from cowardice, but from necessity. To confront Typhon without their king's strength would only end the war faster. Yet retreat carried its own danger. Without Zeus's power, their unity risked unraveling. They understood one truth above all others. Zeus had not simply been defeated. Something of his strength had been taken, severed from him in the chaos of the clash. Without it, the king of the gods remained diminished, unable to command the storm as he once had. The search began in secrecy. Messengers moved quietly between hidden sanctuaries, avoiding open skies where Typhon's storms roamed freely. Whispers replaced proclamations. Plans replaced pride. This was no longer a war of overwhelming force. It was a struggle of patience and resolve. Among those who refused to surrender hope were the swift and clever, the watchers and guides who understood that battles were not won by strength alone. They traced the remnants of Zeus's power across the world, reading signs in the trembling air and listening to the language of wind and flame. The trail led not to Olympus, nor to any throne or battlefield, but to the edges of the known world, places where the air felt strained, as though holding fragments of lightning that had nowhere to strike. There, hidden in deep caverns and storm-scarred valleys, lay echoes of Zeus's strength, scattered during the clash like sparks torn from a fire. Recovering them was no simple task. Each fragment of divine force pulsed with wild energy, resisting capture as if it still fought the battle that had broken it free. The gods approached carefully, gathering the scattered sparks through ritual, word, and will. One by one, the lost currents of Zeus's power were drawn together again. As they gathered the fragments, the sky itself responded. Small flashes of lightning began to align instead of wandering. Winds curved toward a single direction instead of clashing. The world sensed that its missing anchor was being rebuilt. At last, in a hidden valley veiled by constant mist, Zeus himself stood waiting. He was not broken, but he was quieter than before, his presence dimmed like a flame shielded from the wind. When the gathered fragments of his strength were brought to him, they did not simply return, they surged. Lightning reformed around his form in sharp, living arcs. The air thickened with charged energy. The mist above the valley split open as the sky recognized its master once more. Zeus drew in a breath, and with it came the return of the storm that had crowned him king. This was not the same Zeus who had fallen from the sky. This was Zeus tempered by loss, sharpened by the knowledge that the heavens could slip from his grasp. Fury burned in him now, but it was focused, forged into purpose rather than pride. When he stepped forward, thunder answered instantly. Word spread quickly among the gods. The king had risen. The storm had found its voice again. Where once there had been scattered fear, now there was direction. They would not simply survive this war, they would end it. Zeus ascended once more toward the open sky, lightning gathering in spirals around him as if eager to be unleashed. The clouds above parted, then roared back together, forming a colossal storm front that rolled outward across the world. Below, Typhon felt it immediately. The winds he had bent to his presence suddenly resisted. The sky he had darkened began to glow with renewed force. For the first time since their clash, another will pressed against his own. The second battle began not with a strike, but with a collision of storms. Lightning cascaded downward in blinding waves as Zeus reclaimed the heavens. Typhon answered with a surge of heat and wind that turned entire valleys into spirals of ash and dust. The clash spread far beyond Olympus this time, rippling across continents and seas alike. Mountains trembled under the pressure. Forests bent flat beneath raging gusts. Waves climbed higher than cliffs before crashing back into the sea. The world felt caught between two forces too vast to contain. Zeus moved through the sky with renewed command, each bolt striking with purpose rather than desperation. He no longer fought to prove his rule. He fought to restore balance itself. Every thunderclap rang like a declaration that the heavens would not fall to chaos. However, Typhon remained relentless. His wings carved tunnels through storm banks. His coils lashed upward with enough force to fracture entire ridges. Each movement of the monster reshaped the battlefield, forcing Zeus to answer not just with power, but with precision. The sky burned white. The earth glowed red. Between them, the air roared as though the world itself were being reforged. Gods who once had hidden now joined the edges of the conflict,
guiding winds, steadying seas, shielding lands where they could. None dared strike directly at Typhon yet. This battle belonged first to the king who had risen again. Still, the balance teetered. Every strike from Zeus restored order for a moment, only for Typhon's counterforce to unravel it again. Thunder rolled across continents, ash drifted across oceans. The world seemed to sway between two possible futures, one of restored harmony and one of chaos ruled unchallenged. High above the chaos, Zeus gathered the storm into a single towering mass, larger than any he had summoned before. Lightning spiraled inward, drawn toward a single point in his raised hand. Below, Typhon reared upward, wings outstretched, heat blazing from his form in a wave that split the clouds themselves. The sky, the earth, and everything between them seemed to freeze for a single breath, because in that moment the world understood what was at stake. Not merely the fate of Olympus, not merely the pride of the gods, but whether order or chaos would define the future of creation itself. And as thunder began to gather for a strike that would shake the ages, the world stood on the edge of ruin, waiting to see which force would claim it.
There comes a moment in every great myth when the storm stops gathering and finally breaks. For gods and mortals alike, that moment had arrived. The sky blazed as Zeus rose higher than he ever had before, drawing the full weight of the heavens into his grasp. Every current of wind, every spark of lightning, every echo of thunder bent toward him as if answering a final call. Below, Typhon towered against the storm, wings spread wide enough to swallow the horizon. Heat surged from him in waves, turning the air into a trembling haze. Where Zeus commanded the sky, Typhon seemed to command the raw force beneath it, pressure, fire, and motion that existed long before the gods shaped order from chaos. For a breathless instant, neither moved. The world itself seemed to wait, suspended between two rulers. Then Zeus released the storm. Lightning did not fall in scattered bolts. It descended as a single roaring cascade, a river of white fire tearing from the heavens to the earth. Thunder followed instantly, not as a sound, but as a force, shaking mountains and seas alike. The sky itself seemed to split open, pouring its power downward in a final, unbroken strike. Typhon answered with everything he possessed. Flames surged upward in spirals. Winds exploded outward in a wall of force. His wings beat once, twice, driving cyclones into the descending storm. The clash turned the air into a blinding storm of light and heat, where sky and earth collided without mercy. The impact reshaped the world. Mountains fractured under the pressure, valleys sank where the ground softened, forests flattened as winds howled across them like an unstoppable tide. Even the seas recoiled, their waves driven back as though the ocean itself feared the force unleashed above it. Still, Zeus pressed forward. This time he did not hurl thunder in bursts, he held it, shaping the storm into a weapon of relentless focus. Each strike followed the last without pause, forcing Typhon backward step by step. The monster roared, his voice rolling across the land like an earthquake, but even that sound faltered as the sky's fury tightened around him. For the first time since his birth, Typhon was forced into defense. He lashed upward with coils that could shatter cliffs, but Zeus met them with walls of lightning that burned brighter than the sun. He drove forward on wings of storm, yet the sky closed in on him from every side. What had once been his strength, his vast presence, now left him with nowhere to retreat. The final collision came with a force that silenced even thunder. Zeus gathered every remaining spark of the heavens into one last strike and drove it downward with absolute certainty. The bolt struck Typhon at the heart of his rising fury, and for a moment the world vanished into white. When the light faded, the monster fell. Typhon crashed against the earth with a force that shook the continents. The ground split beneath him, opening into a chasm that seemed to swallow sound itself. Smoke and steam rolled outward in waves as the storm above began to steady, no longer wild, but commanded once more. Zeus descended slowly, the storm still coiled around him, but no longer raging. He did not celebrate, he did not roar, he simply watched as the earth itself sealed around the fallen force. The monster was not destroyed, he was bound. Buried beneath the weight of mountains and stone, Typhon was driven into the deep places of the world where his fury could no longer reach the sky. The tremors of his defeat echoed through the land, shaping ridges and valleys that would remain long after memory faded. The world bore the marks of the battle. New mountains rose where the ground had buckled, plains stretched where forests once stood, volcanoes hissed and breathed, reminders that the force of Typhon still stirred far below. The land itself carried the scars of the clash, proof that the struggle between order and chaos had touched every corner of creation. Above it all, the sky cleared. The clouds settled into calm formations, the winds resumed their paths, lightning flickered once, gently, before fading into distant blue. The heavens had found their ruler again, and the world felt the difference immediately. On the heights of Mount Olympus, the gods returned one by one. The halls that had fallen silent now filled again with voices, though none spoke lightly of what had passed. They understood now that their rule was not guaranteed by birthright or power alone. It endured because it had been defended. Zeus reclaimed his throne not with pride, but with resolve. He had faced a force born from the earth itself and prevailed, yet he knew that order required vigilance. The heavens would remain steady only so long as the gods remembered the cost of losing them. Far below, the imprisoned Typhon did not vanish into legend. His presence endured in subtler ways, in the rumble of distant volcanoes, in storms that rose too quickly, in winds that howled across barren cliffs. The Greeks would come to call him the father of monsters, believing that many later creatures carried echoes of his power. His defeat did not erase him, it defined him. Because Typhon became more than a foe overcome, he became a warning etched into myth that even the greatest gods could be challenged and that the balance of the world could never be taken for granted. And so the order of Olympus endured, the heavens held, the world moved forward beneath a sky once again guided by thunder, not threatened by it. Yet the story of Typhon remained, carried in whispers, in tremors, and in the quiet understanding that chaos never truly disappears. It waits deep below for its moment. If you enjoy journeys into ancient myths where gods rise, fall, and fight for the shape of the world, staying connected here is the best way to keep those stories unfolding. There are many more legends ahead, and the next one may be even more surprising than this one.